Hey everyone and welcome to Storytime. My name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at the subreddit r/prorevenge, where people tell us their best stories on when they got revenge on someone or something they didn't like. If you're new around here, please do hit subscribe down below so that you never miss out on another video. But for now, let's sit back, relax and enjoy some pro-revenge stories. Garage manager tries to screw over a loyal customer. Customer gets revenge. Garage owner is awesome. Mechanics are notorious for not maintaining their personal daily drivers, but the significant other's car will always be well maintained because you don't want a broken car and an angry wife. Molvo, the Volvo, may be a little old, a 02 S60 turbo, but it gets all of its service done at one garage, and has for the last 60,000 miles all on time with the owner's manual. On the last oil change, the cartridge filter cap was tightened too much, fusing the cap to the block with the force of 1,000 gods. The service writer tried to sell me a new cap and repair, has to air chisel the plastic cap off. I laughed and asked to speak to the general manager, or owner. I told the general manager that this shop has done all my services for the last 60,000 miles. If this was improperly installed, the fault is on them. Of course, the manager still tried to say it wasn't their fault and refused to fix the problem. This got me mad. I said, "It is obvious that you are not going to make this right," and walk over to the wall with the business license, Bureau of Auto Repair certificate, etc. I start writing all the business information down on the back of the estimate sheet I was given by the service writer, so I can contact the owner. While doing this, I told the general manager to get my car out of the bay and give me my keys. The tech had drained the oil, but refilled it to the proper level before letting the vehicle leave the shop. The manager then walks up with my keys and a bill for 15 minutes of shop time and 5 quarts of oil. I looked at him and said, "Really, you want to be like this?" And the general manager replied, "Yeah, I didn't charge the 1 hour minimum, so feel lucky." What a douchebag. So Molvo the Volvo and I go to the dealership. I explain what happened at my regular garage and tell the Volvo mechanic to fix it proper, about $400. Now that Molvo is fixed, I get to work. I did some digging and found the owner of the shop's phone number. I explained to the owner that I would have no choice but to bring a lawsuit against the company to reclaim damages and legal fees because the general manager was not willing to fix a problem that was caused by a technician at the shop. After legal fees and costs, the $400 fix could cost the shop thousands in court. The owner cooled me down and was on my side. I meet him for lunch the next day and walk him through what happened. He apologized for the problem and we went to the garage after lunch. The moment we walked in, the general manager walks up and greets the owner. "Hey boss, how are?" He gets cut off by the owner saying, "Oh, I'm not your boss anymore. Go in the office, wait, and I will tell you why." The owner writes me a check for the dealership bill, refunds me the repair bill, and hands me a ticket book full of free oil changes, a transmission flush, tire rotations, etc. He says, "I have been in this business in this town for 40 years. I take great pride in my company's reputation and hope you keep doing business with us." I reply, "You got my business for life because you made things right." On my way out, I stop and arrange a service appointment for my other car, and can hear the owner ripping into the general manager. General manager walks out of the office, and as he passes me mumbles something I couldn't hear. The next time I brought a car in, the service writer told me that the general manager had to move away from this town because nobody would hire him. Local business owners here talk a lot, and the shop owners let everyone know that general manager was dishonest to customers and could possibly damage their reputation with his "not my fault" attitude. That general manager definitely thought he was being really smart by doing that. He was like, "Oh, I'm gonna charge him a bit extra cause, oh, no. And then he was probably like, oh, when the owner told him that he's fired. Chief Financial Officer can't do math. Warning, includes math. A few years ago, I worked for a tech company that was only just keeping its head above water. Most of the staff genuinely believed in the product line and did their best, but nothing was ever a standout success. Many ideas were put up to management, but often knocked back by the Chief Financial Officer, who we will call Karen, who said it would be too expensive or wouldn't get a good return on investment, and many ideas we knew would never work somehow got approved but never achieved anything. My team was working on a product enhancement we were absolutely convinced would be successful. We had a realistic budget, we had customer feedback showing this was needed and wanted, and firm offers to purchase it if it was available. We were convinced our numbers were watertight and put them up to management. Next product meeting the following week, and Karen shoots down every argument we put. Despite the customer feedback, she claims our numbers are wrong and it will lose money. We simply can't understand this, as we had been over them many times. We start going through the figures step by step, and she keeps telling us we're wrong. Out of frustration, my manager goes to the whiteboard, yeah, we still have one, and walks everybody through the figures step by step. Almost everybody is doing the math themselves on their tablets or phones, or on a good old-fashioned paper and nodding in agreement. Except Karen, who is using a credit card-sized calculator that came with her expensive leather binder, and keeps saying we're wrong. My manager suddenly works out what might be happening, and asks to have a look at Karen's calculator. He does a few basic calculations, and his suspicion is correct. The cheap calculator does not follow the order of operations. Order of operations is a fundamental set of rules about which calculations to perform first in a mathematical expression. For example, 2 plus 3 times 4 is read as 2 plus open bracket 3 times 4 closed bracket, meaning you always do multiplication and division before addition and subtraction. So, 2 plus 3 times 4 equals 14. What Karen's cheap calculator was doing was all operations in the order they were entered, and reading 2 plus 3 times 4 as 2 plus 3 in brackets times 4, which equals 20. So, a room full of people with degrees in computer science, engineering and finance all agree the figures are right, except Karen, who is convinced we were wrong because her bad calculator says so. She maintains we are wrong, and our figures don't fit with her way of thinking. The revenge. At the end of each month, each team has to submit expenses reports. We are normally quite good at forecasting expenses, and any variation is usually something we need to buy at short notice. These are submitted to Karen for approval, who then authorizes adjustments in our budgets. Two engineers, who are mathematical geniuses, spent most of their coffee and lunch breaks for nearly a whole month madly scribbling down complex calculations. They suggest some very small variations to planned purchases. Bring a few items forward by a month, push a few items back a month, use a couple of different suppliers for multiples of the same items. Nothing unusual about this, as we have a range of ways to buy things at short notice from various suppliers. The whole thing is cost neutral overall, but it's a variation that needs to be approved. Then, they prepare the expense report for the manager to submit to Karen, who demands an explanation. The manager gleefully submits an itemized list of expenses for the month and the next month, and invites Karen to check the figures herself. Use your calculator, he says. The variation in expenses is very small when calculated properly, but comes out to millions of dollars if done the way Karen's bad calculator does it. As I said, these engineers are mathematical geniuses. Karen isn't impressed by this and takes it to the CEO. She launches into a tirade about engineers forging expense reports to embezzle millions from the company. She basically accuses the entire team of fraud. The CEO says he will look into it and comes to see my manager. This in itself is very unusual, as the CEO very rarely leaves his office for things like this. If there are any problems, you are usually summoned to see the CEO. The CEO isn't a bad guy, just really busy most of the time. We're watching the manager through the glass partition go through a lengthy explanation with the CEO, pointing out figures on the screen and writing on bits of paper. The CEO sits there in silence for a minute, taking it all in. Then, suddenly, bursts out laughing to the point of tears rolling down his cheeks. Then, suddenly, he's not laughing. He goes back into his office, and within a few hours, there are a couple of auditors going through some of Karen's financial reports. There are glaring errors, which they initially think might be signs of fraud or embezzlement, but eventually they put it down to Karen's bad calculator. Not fraud, just incompetence. Karen is summoned to the CEO's office. We don't know exactly what is being said, but we can hear the CEO shouting. He never shouts. The result is Karen gets fired, despite still maintaining she is right and everybody else is wrong. She has just 1 hour to pack up her desk and leave. She is finally escorted out of the building. When she gets to her car, there is a piece of paper taped to the windshield. It's a picture of Stephen Hawking with the words, "You must be at least this smart to invent your own branch of mathematics." Oh, that ending was just perfect. I would love to have seen her face right then. But really, being wrong is one thing, but then refusing to admit you're wrong is just a whole nother level of stupid. Mess with my dog? I will salt the earth. A bit of a background first to make this make sense. I rent a home from a guy that also runs a business on the property. There are 2 homes, his home and our rental, and 2 work buildings, a small warehouse and a large garage. These buildings all share the same address. This is important. There's a woman that works in one of those buildings named Pam. Well, about 9 months ago, we got a dog. She's less than a year old and is still learning how to walk on a leash and stuff. She loves being outside, so much so that she will cry all day if you do not let her out for at least a few hours. Also, we have her on special food and monitor her water because she will drink until she baths. We still love her, but she is dumb as heck. Well, the property doesn't have a fenced-in yard, so she was stuck with taking a bunch of walks a day until we installed a dog run type thing. It's high up and she is tethered to it. It gives her a bunch of shade and about a 20 to 25 feet of runaround / play space. She gets a reasonable amount of water all day as we have one person home at all times. Well, Pam comes over a couple months ago to tell me I should give the dog back to the shelter because I don't play with her enough and she's tied up outside. I rolled my eyes and say, "Thanks, but you don't live here and don't know our situation," and close the door in her face. Well, she has spent the last couple months harassing us. She's tried taking the dog off the tether when she thinks we aren't home. She's been successful a couple times, giving her food, giving her water, and playing with her. Except for puppy kidnapping, these don't sound too bad, I know, but there is context. We tell her to leave us alone at least 3 times in person and once in writing. Finally, she gets fed up and calls the police. We have no idea she did that until an officer showed up. He asks for our side of the story, and I tell him that we don't let her run free as this is a rural area and she is a baby. She could get hurt or lost. We don't want her feeding the dog because she has a special diet and it messes with her stomach. We don't want her giving her water because of the throwing up issues, and she is giving it in a plastic coffee container that she could chew and swallow bits of plastic and needs surgery. We don't want her coming over and playing with the dog because she uses her sleeve as a toy, and we are now struggling to train the dog to not bite people's sleeves. The officer hears our side and checks on the dog and says not only is our setup complement with the law, it's one of the best ones he's ever seen. He said not to worry, that we are doing nothing wrong, and that this Pam lady doesn't seem all there and thinks the dog should be free. Do not let her do that. Great. We contact our landlord to tell him what happened and that we don't want to see his employee on the property line for the house that we are renting. I'm not asking she be fired or anything, just that I don't have to see her. The landlord basically says, not my problem, that's between you and her. I legally can't do anything. You have to follow the law. Well, we sit with that for a couple weeks, and she starts back up again. This time we've had it, and storm outside when she shows up. She gets between us and our dog and refuses to move. We are trying to get the dog from her, and she won't let us. That was enough for me, so I took the bowl of water I was carrying and poured it over her head. No regrets, she deserved it. And she is in shock I did it, the same way a Karen is shocked when someone calls them out. I tell her for the millionth time she isn't welcome here, and she yells. Call the police then. Here's where the complaint starts. The landlord refusing to take sides after our repeated attempts to ask for help means I'm left to figure this out myself. I said to the landlord, if you don't handle it, I will do anything I legally can to fix the situation. He said okay, he's not taking sides. Cool. I called the police. I still had the card from the first officer that showed up, and referenced him and told them how she has already been advised by an officer to leave us alone. The new officer issued a trespass order against her. The order specifically states that she is not allowed at the address the house is at or any affiliated buildings or land on that lot. So she's not allowed to come to the property to work. The landlord then gets mad and tells us to revoke it, so he could use her for work. We refuse. In fact, since he didn't help us and told us to go by the law, that's what we're doing. We don't have a rental contract. He wants us to pay in cash for tax reasons, and he won't fix anything at the house, so is basically a slumlord. Guess who is only getting checks from now on? And I will be deducting the cost to fix stuff around the house from rent, as I am allowed to by law. In fact, I'm even willing to sign a rental agreement, since this house is not up to code and doesn't have a separate area. I'm well within my rights to sign the lease and kick him and the business out of the larger house. If he tries to fight that, or he has to explain to a court why he didn't file any rental income on his taxes, and then reimburse us for all the rent we've paid to live in a house that he was expressively told by the city he couldn't rent out. We found this out recently. His business is also dumping waste and burning waste on the property, which is not in compliance with the law. Guess who's calling to report that? He also doesn't offer the proper protective gear to his employees, has a ton of OSHA violations, and doesn't post the required stuff about labor laws. I will be reporting that too, because if you only want to follow the laws, I have no problem with that. Wow, well, that escalated a lot quicker than I thought it would. I was like, yeah, they got that woman next door, Pam. Yeah, because she was mean to the dog. And then it was like, oh, and I also ruined our landlord's life. Wow. I'm not saying he didn't deserve it though, because yeah, he definitely did if he was violating the law. Hey everyone, I hope you all had a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to check out some other videos, then click on screen right now, or check out the playlist down below. If you enjoyed that video, then please do leave a like. And if you want to submit your own stories, then you can do so by joining the Discord in the top link in the description. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon.